Hi students, today we're going to talk about lesson 14 in your workbooks. So if you could go ahead and open your workbooks and turn to that page, we can get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is looking at the area of a triangle. Hopefully you guys will remember to find the area of a triangle. It is area equals not just the base times the height, but it's actually half the base times the height. So a triangle makes up a triangle is half of a square. So half the base times the height will be the area that we're going to look for. And they want us to find the area of this triangle here with that formula. And we have a base of 4.5 centimeters and a height of 4.5 centimeters. Or you can look at this as the base and this is the height. So let's plug in our numbers. The area will equal 1/2 times 4.5 times 4.5. And remember, we don't just multiply across with mixed numbers. We have to do some conversions. So 1/2 times, and we take the denominator, multiply it by the whole number. So 2 times 4 is 8. We add the numerator, which is 9. So this is going to be 9, and the same denominator applies, so 9/2. This 4.5 is going to be the same thing. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9/2. So now when we multiply across, we get 1 times 9 is 9, 9 times 9 is 81. And in the denominator, we get 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. Now we can leave it that way, but really we're working with mixed numbers here in the problem. So if we convert it back to a mixed number, we know that 8 goes into 81 a total of 10 times. 8 times 10 is 80, so there's 1 left over, and we keep the same denominator. Now they gave us the measurements here, and it's in centimeters, so our answer should be in centimeters. And when we take the area, it's centimeters squared, because we're working with a height and a length. There are 2 dimensions there. So this, my friends, is your final answer. And as we move on into the lesson, they're going to give us different bases and heights of triangles, and there's an unknown piece that we'll need to figure out. The first one says the area of this triangle is 8 square units, and they want us to find the length of B. So here's the length of B, that's the base, and they want us to show our reasoning. Well, let's start out with the formula again. The area is half the base times the height. And they gave us the area, so let's fill in the area. The area is 8, so there's 8. 8 equals half. The base we don't know because that's our B, but we do know the height. The height is 8/3. Okay, so half the base times the height equals the area. Just have to look at what information they are giving you. And in this case, they gave us the area, but they did not give us the length of the base. So let's rewrite this. I've got 8 equals. Now, even though this B is in the middle here, we can still cross cancel. 2 goes into itself 1 time, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. Now when we multiply across, we get 1 times 4 is 4, and 1 times 3 is 3, and we still have the unknown B. Now, when we're trying to get the variable by itself, we need to get rid of whatever is with the variable. And right now, what's with the variable is 4/3, and 4/3 is being multiplied times this variable. So to get rid of that 4/3, I'm going to have to divide by 4/3. And whatever I do to that side, I have to do to this side. So over here, I'm going to have to divide by 4/3. Okay, so when we divide by 4/3, remember, I'm going to move over here. 4/3 divided by 4/3. remember working with fractions, we keep the first one, we change the sign, and we flip the second one. So keep, change, flip. That's what we're looking at here. And really what you're doing, instead of dividing by the fraction, look here, you're actually multiplying by the reciprocal. And when you do that, 4/3 multiplied by its reciprocal, 3 cancels out 3, and 4 cancels out 4. We get 1 times 1 in the numerator and 1 times 1 in the denominator. 1 over 1 is 1. So on this side over here, we have 1b. On this side, we have 8 divided by 4/3. I put it in parentheses here because it's not 4/3 divided by 8. I just kind of added it to the side. It's 8 divided by 4/3. And again, when you when you're dividing fractions, you're really multiplying by the reciprocal. So I can do 8 over 1, keep, change the division sign to a multiplication sign, and flip. So we're multiplying by the reciprocal, and doing this, 4 goes into itself once, and 4 goes into 8 twice. So we get 2 times 3 is 6, and 1 times 1 is 1. So really we get 6 over 1, or 6 equals the base. And they just said square units, so we don't have to, we can write out square units, but I'm not going to ask you to right now. So when they say show your reasoning, we went ahead and showed all of the work, and that is our reasoning. So let's look at number 2. Number 2, they give us the area, and they gave us the length of the base, but what they didn't give us is the height. So we're going to use that same formula. Area equals 1/2 base times the height. And they gave us the area, so I'm going to go ahead and replace the A with 54 over 5. And that equals 1/2 stays 1/2. They gave us the base, which is 3. So I'm multiplying by 3 and 3/5. And then we have to multiply by the height, which is unknown at this time. So again, I'm going to rewrite it. 54 over 5 equals 1/2. And instead of that 3 and 3/5, I'm going to have to change that into an improper fraction. 5 times 3 is 15. 15 plus 3 is 18. I keep that over 5 because that's our denominator. And then we bring down the h. So on the right side of the equation, well, let's rewrite the left side of the equation. So we've got 54 over 5 equals, we can't cross cancel the 1 and 5. That stays the same. But the 2 and the 18, we certainly can. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. So we made that a bit simpler. So we have 1 times 9 is 9, and we have 1 times 5 is 5 times h. Now again, we have 9/5 being multiplied times h. We need to divide, because it's being multiplied, we need to do the opposite operation, which is division. But when you divide fractions, you're really multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'm multiplying by the reciprocal. Whatever I do on that side, I have to do on this side, multiply by the reciprocal. Now let's look at our right side. 9 goes into itself 1 time, 9 goes into itself 1 time, 5 goes into itself 1 time, 5 goes into itself 1 time. So over here, I have 1 over 1 times h, or 1h. On the left side, I've got a 5 and a 5. Well, 5 divided by 5 is 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. Now I have a 9 and a 54. And 9 is a factor of 9, and 9 is also a factor of 54. So I can cross cancel with the factor of 9. 9 divided by 9 is 1. 54 divided by 9 is 6. So over here I have 1 times 6 in the numerator, 1 times 1 in the denominator. So I have 6 over 1, or 6 equals h. Okay, so if we're given 2 of the dimensions of the triangle, we can find its area. If we're given the area and 1 dimension, we can still find that other dimension. And we did it both with the height and the base. So let's keep going in our workbooks. Let's see, I need to minimize this window. Here we go. So let's take a look at this next section, and it says that your teacher is going to give you a set of cubes. Well, I can't very well do that when you're at home watching this video, but what I do have is this, what's called an applet. So it's a little app within our program here. And we're going to use this to answer some of these questions. It gives you a drawing of a cube with an edge length of 1 inch. And they want to know how many cubes with an edge length of 1/2 inch are needed to fill in that entire cube. So we have a 1/2 inch cube, and we need to keep adding cubes until we make 1 inch across, 1 inch in length, and 1 inch high. So let's look at 1 inch. If we have 1 cube, that's 1/2 inch, and I move that to 2, I have 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch there. So my total length is 1 inch. If I add a cube to the width, I now have 1/2 inch plus 1/2 inch, which is 1 inch. So I have 1 inch by 1 inch with 4 cubes, but my height is only 1/2 inch. And in the picture in your books, they're asking you to fill a 1 inch cube that's 1 inch in height as well. So I'm going to have to add another set of blocks on top. This now is a 1 inch cube that has all of the 1/2 inch cubes blocks in them. And they're asking you how many 1/2 inch cubes would we need to fill the 1 inch cube? Well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 cubes on top, and I would have the 1, 2, 3, 4 cubes on the bottom as well. So the answer to question A would be 8 cubes. Well, whoops, that's the wrong one. Let's see, where is it? Here it is. So the answer to this one is 8 cubes. 8 1/2 inch cubes will fill up that entire 1 inch cube block. Now they're saying, what is the volume in cubic inches of a cube with a 1/2 inch, with a length of 1/2 inch? And they want us to explain or show the reasoning. Well, let me open up this applet again. Right here, we have a 1 inch cube. It's 1 by 1 by 1. And we know 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. They want to know, what is the volume of just this tiny little cube? Well, how many cubes did we say we had in there? We had 8 cubes. So if we take 1 of them out, we're taking 1 out of 8 cubes. So the volume is going to be 1/8 of a cube. So our volume here is 1/8, cubic inch. This is inches cubed. And basically what we found is that 1/2 inch cube by 1/2 inch cube, that's not really a good drawing. There we go. And we're going to come up here 1/2 inch. And we'll come over here 1/2 inch. This cube right here is 1 out of 8. So we can show that with 1/8 cubic inches. Part C says 4 cubes are piled in a single stack to make a prism. Each cube has an edge length of 1/2 inch. They want you to sketch the prism and find its volume. Well, instead of sketching, let's look at our applet again. I'm going to clear this out. They have 4 of these stacked on top of each other. And they want to know, let's see if I can find my spot on my paper since I lost that. They want to know the volume of this prism with 4 half-inch cubes. Well, we know the volume of one of the half-inch cubes is 1/8 cubic inch. So if I have 1/8 cubic inch plus 1/8 cubic inch plus 1/8 cubic inch plus 1/8 cubic inch, I can find the volume of that prism. The other thing I can do, instead of adding 1/8 over and over again, is I can multiply. So I have 1/8 cubic inch, and I'm multiplying that times 4 blocks. And when I do that, 4 is really 4 over 1. 4 goes into itself 1 time, and 4 goes into 8 2 times. So I get 1/2 cubic inch. And that would be the volume of the entire prism that was stacked. So we're going to fill out this table that they have here. And they give us some information here. I'm going to make it a little bigger so my writing doesn't have to be so small. But they give us this table. And the first one says, they're talking half-inch cubes again. And they want us to fill out the number of half-inch cubes that we are going to need. And they're going to ask us to fill out the volume for each one. So what if we have a prism that's 1/2 inch in length, 1/2 inch in width, and 1/2 inch in height? How many 1/2 inch cubes is that? Well, we just did that on our applet, wherever my applet is now. Let me see where it is. So 1 1/2 inch cube is 1/2 inch high, 1/2 inch wide, and 1/2 inch long. And we already decided that the volume, so if that's 1 cube, the volume of that we already decided is 1/8 cubic inch. We're not going to have to rewrite cubic inch in each one since it's stated up here in the title of our column. The next row says, well, now we have a prism in 1 inch length, 1 inch width, but still 1/2 inch high. So let's look at our applet and see what that might look like. So we need 2 blocks to go long and 2 blocks to go wide, but we only have 1/2 inch in height. So how many blocks will we need? And that is 4. So let's fill this in for 4. My pen to wake up here. So there's 4. Now they're asking us, well, what is the volume of that prism? Well, we know the volume of 1 is 1/8. So the volume of 4 1/8 is going to be 1/8 times 4, which we already did up in the upper part, and we know that will equal 1/2. So let's fill that in, 1/2. The next one is 2 inches and 1 inch wide and 1/2 inch high. So basically in this one here, we have 4. Now we're doubling in length. So if we double only one of them, we're going to have 8 cubes. And if we test that, we've got 2 inches in length. So let's open this up. Right now, we only have 1 inch in length because we have 1/2 inch plus 1/2 inch is 1 inch. So if we do another, that's 1.5 inches, and there's 2 inches. So we have 2 inches long, and we have still 1 inch wide, and 1 inch wide and still 1/2 inch high. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 1/2 inch blocks. And then they want to know, what is the volume of that prism? Well, again, we know the volume of 1 is 1/8. So if I take 1/8 and multiply it times 8, or 8 over 1, I am going to get, 8 cancels out 8, I'm going to get 1 over 1, or 1. So the volume of that prism will be 1 cubic inch. Over here again, we're doubling everything. We keep the same length. We're going to double the width and we're going to double the heights. We want 2 inches. Let me go back to our applet. There it is. So we want 2 inches wide. And now we want, how many inches? We want 1 inch high. So this right here is a 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch. So the height now is 1 inch. And we have 2 inches wide and 2 inches long. So how many blocks are there? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 times 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 16 blocks on the top layer and we have 16 blocks on the lower layer. So we have 32 blocks. And remember, those are 1/2 inch blocks. So we can take 32 and multiply it times 1/8. This is really 32 over 1. And if we cancel out, 8 goes into itself once. 8 goes into 32 4 times. So we get 4 over 1, or 4. So our volume is 4 cubic inches. So let's look and see if we see a pattern here. The pattern is, if I take 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2, what is my volume going to be? 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 is going to be 1/8. This one I take 1 times 1 times 1/2 and I get 1/2. On this one, if I take 2 times 1, I get 2. 2 times 1/2 is actually 1. So the pattern is showing me that every time I multiply the length times the width times the height, I'm getting the volume. Let's check it out here and see if that works for this row. 2 times 2 is 4, times 1 is 4. So let's look at the pattern here. 4 times 2 is 8. Now we need to do 8 times 3 over 2. And this is really 8 over 1. So 2 goes into itself once. 2 goes into 8 4 times. 4 times 3 is 12. And that's 12 over 1, or 12. We're going to come back to the number of blocks here. Let's try the volume on this one. 5 times 4 is 20. 20 times 2 is 40. And then finally I have 5 times 4 is 20 times 2.5. So I have 20 times 2.5. And I have to change those into fractions. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5 over 2. So I get 20 times 5 is 100 over 2, and when I reduce that, I get 50. Okay. And then what I found for the blocks, I'm just going to let you know how many blocks it is so we can save a little bit of time in our video. It's 320 and then 400. So what I would like you guys to do is see if you can find a pattern with the number of 1/2 inch cubes that we would need based on the size and the number and the width. So part B says, what do you notice about the relationship between the edge lengths of the prism and the volume? Well, what we noticed is the volume is equal to each edge length multiplied times each other. So we have an edge length of length, we have an edge length of width, and we have an edge length of height. And when we multiply those three together, we get the volume of the cube. So with this information, this is what you should circle, star, memorize. This is the information you need. With that information, they want to know what is the volume of a rectangular prism that is 1 1/2 inches by 2 1/4 inches by 4. Well, they've got 1 1/2 inches times 2 1/4 inches times 4 inches. We got to turn all of those into improper fractions. So 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, that's over 2. 4 times 2 is 8, 8 plus 1 is 9, and that's over 4. And then 4 is 4 over 1. So we can go ahead and cross cancel. 4 goes into 4 one time, 4 goes into 4 one time. And it looks like that's it. So I've got 3 times 9 is 27 times 1 is 27. And I have 2 times 1 is 2 times 1 is 2. And if I want to reduce that, 2 goes into 27 13 times, and there's 1 left over, so I put that over the denominator, and I've got 13 1/2 inches cubed. Now remember, when you are finding volume, you're working on cubic inches or cubic units because you have three dimensions. You have a length, you have a width, and you have a height. In area, you only had a length and a width, so it was area is squared units. In volume, because you have 3 dimensions, we are always going to show it in cubic form. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your lesson. The only thing I wanted to point out to you, because it's a question in your homework, is when you think about how many cubes, how many 1/2 inch cubes go into 1 inch? Well, if it's 1 inch in height, we're going to have 1 1/2 inch cube here and 1 1/2 inch cube here. So because they're 1/2 inch cubes, you would need 2 to fill in the height. If they asked you how many 1/4 inch cubes, we would have to split this length into fourths, and we would have 1 1/4 inch cube there, 1 1/4 inch cube there, 1 1/4 inch cube there, and 1 1/4 inch cube there. So if they ask you how many 1/4 inch cubes go in there, that would be 4, because there are 4 sections when you split it into quarters. There are 2 sections when you split it into half. So that's just a little hint about one of the questions in your homework. Other than that, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in school next time.